I'm going to tell you about the history of self-organized art in the Soviet Union and in Russia during the 60s up to the 90s. So it was a very different context, different social and economic environment, and actually a new universe, completely different universe is discovered when we discuss the typology. The DIY typology, do-it-yourself practices. And in the Soviet Union, these practices were very interesting. And it's completely different from what we have heard today, and it is resonating with today. I'm not going to repeat about the major features of such initiatives. But it's true that we ask the question, who is it who self-organizes? What kind of artists are making an effort to manage their exhibitions and their activities? Who are these people? Why can't they delegate this responsibility to someone else who can do it much better? Why don't they just create art? And we can find the answer straight away. The art is excluded from the global system that they're trying to fit in. Or sometimes they are not trying to fit in with the system that kicked them out. Maybe they are thinking about alternative ways of survival and of their existence in art. Whenever we ask ourselves why, we find similar answers, because they want to exist like artists. They want to exchange their art with those that can see it, for communication with the artist. And whenever we think about the time in the Soviet Union when the contemporary art began to shape, we have to realize that the artists excluded from the global system, the artists that are desperate for communication, desperate for establishing contact with the audience, are the artists that belong to underground art, the art which is not official, the art that were excluded from the process of production and consumption of art that happened in the Soviet Union. We shouldn't confuse it with non-conformists or underground artists in the Soviet Union and non-recognized artists, because these artists never sought recognition. They were trying to say that just like any other creators, they had the right to showcase their works, to sell their case and their works. So the alternative mechanisms of the 50s and 60s was very similar to what happened in the Western Europe and the US. For example, example, speaking about the very first activities that took place in apartments, Rico Tan gave an interview to Eurofave, and so he is saying about the advantages that he had. For example, he says, I had 2 rooms. This was very important to provide a place for exhibiting art that can never be exhibited by giant institutions like the Tretyakov Gallery or the Garage Museum. So just 2 rooms. And he came up with his friends, artists came up to Rokotan with a proposal to organize the exhibition, and his parents were away and some things were moved to a smaller room. The big living room was closer to the entrance. This is a quotation from the interview. And the artists that participated in that exhibition decided to make the entrance free to that room, but no talks about politics could be allowed. And that's what he's saying. We shouldn't talk about politics, and we are going to stop any talk about politics. So they would tell each other about this exhibition. And his friend Igor Kukris said that we took out all the furniture, and so we had about 15 paintings in the main living room, and we also had some drawings on the walls. So this is December 1956, and this is the earliest practice of the self-organization system that shaped in the underground art. So Rokotan said about the audience that visited the exhibition. He wrote, of course, most of the people that came on the first day were people that we knew. There were not many, but then the next day came people that nobody knew, because we wanted to make it a secretive thing. So we never announced that we created an exhibition at university, but then one friend from university came to see the exhibition, and he found it out from the students in the Shukin Institute. So the alternative communication worked really well. Speaking about the funding for such organizations, there was a cylindrical something standing on the table, and it was written on the paper, 4 brushes for artists. So anybody could drop some coins or some money in it. But of course we used it for drinking, but we could only get some money for 1 or 2 bottles of vodka. So we didn't really have much money, and that's how the first kvartirnik came into being. And later on, artists not just organized some exhibitions in their apartments, but they actually started entrepreneurial activities. At the same time, about 1 year later, they brought some works, and it was Vladimir Slipian. He was a mathematician, Rokotan was a physicist, so he brought the works of young Belarusian artists' works. It was Oleg Tselkov's works, and he showed his works in his room in the student hostel. So they tried to deceive the system that wanted to control everything, and Rokotan continued the story of his guerrilla journeys, and he was saying in a different interview that we were deceiving party committee, organizing unauthorized exhibitions at Moscow State University. The university had its own art studio, and that art studio had to hold some exhibitions that were about reporting about art. And after meeting Plavinsky in 1970s, the natural science students organized his exhibition in the foyer, in the lobby of the university, as if they were the members of that art studio in Moscow State University, and that's how Dmitry Plavinsky's exhibition was organized in the lobby. Of course, those brave things could be implemented when there were opportunities for that during the Khrushchev thaw period of time, because the artists could get other places. At that time it was easier to use that space. But moving towards the Brezhnev's time, it became much more complicated. So both the artists and those that sympathized with them participated in their initiatives. For example, Leonid Talochkin, a collector, and Alexander Klezer, a collector, participated in those initiatives. For Leonid Talochkin is actually putting the works on the fence that surrounded Edmund and Nina Stevens. Edmund Stevens was an American journalist that had accreditation to work in Moscow. This mansion can be still found in Moscow. This was the first open-air exhibition that was held in Moscow. So it's actually the topic of our third session about no man's land, but the nationality of the owner of this place was very important, and his wife's personality, which still remains a riddle for researchers. So these private spaces becomes the prime venue for non-conformists in the 60s and 70s. They are the apartments of people that loved art, of those people that were ready to feel uncomfortable of so many people coming to see the exhibition. So they are the apartments of Alexander Glazer, who opened the doors of his apartment, and he opened a museum of non-official art. Then the apartment of Leonid Talochkin, who lets people see the exposition of his own home museum. So all these stories are related to some external help. When the fans or some patrons did their best to overcome the barriers that the artists faced. And a very important stage for the artist self-organization was the first autumn display of open-air exhibition on the 9th of September 1974. It's known as Bulldozer exhibition. So the artists wanted to expand the audience, and so that's why they decided to come together to make a very to do a very risky thing, to come out to the crossroads of Ostrovityanova Street and Profsoyuzная Street. There were quite few artists, as you can see in that invitation. Many of them came down in history as the participants of that Bulldozer exhibition. You know the history of Bulldozer exhibition very well. You know that the policeman wanted to get rid of everyone, and so people destroyed the works, those that dared to do it. And just 2 weeks later, the state, the biggest institution responsible for the production and consumption of art in the Soviet Union, as well as the group of alternative artists, the group of non-official artists, began to come towards the phenomenon when one party agreed to do it, and so in Izmailovsky Park there was the second open-air exhibition in Izmailovsky Park. The state didn't spend a penny to produce this event. They just signed documents that allowed this. So the artists brought their instruments with them, and about like dozens of thousands of people managed to see these works of artists once they heard that a forbidden exhibition was to take place in Izmailovsky Park.
And nevertheless, even that wasn't enough, and even after foundation of the city committee of section of painters at the city committee of graphic artists, still the artists who felt totally excluded from the main body of Soviet art, well, to many it seemed that they were forgotten to be accepted to this section of the artists, and this ghetto on Malaya Gruzinskaya Street was too small to give room for everybody. So after the second exhibition permitted by the authorities in the pavilion of bee farming at the exhibition of economic achievements, well, the artists organized apartment exhibitions at 8 addresses where there was the whole wave of successive exhibitions. So here you see the rules and instructions for admissions, which were printed, typewriters which were passed from hands to hands, including the list of artist names, and instead of posters they also had makeshift big boards with the addresses where these exhibitions were arranged. So you see the art lived not in the empty, sterile environment or space, so they lived among the personal things of their owners, the artists, So one of these apartments belonged to Oscar Rabin, the one who organized the bulldozer exhibition. Also the apartment of Joseph Kibritsky, now notorious art figure in St. Petersburg. That was the apartment of Mikhail Admiralov, and another 5 apartments in central Moscow and cities outskirts as well. So what I wanted to say is that apartment art lived in the nearest proximity to the habitual objects of the dwellers, of the owners of the apartment. Here's the lamp, the chair, the stool. Here's somebody's grandmother entering the apartment. So on this slide we see a fairly clear space, evidently arranged in a studio, not in a flat. But mostly these were personal apartments where the art was placed on the walls, 3 spans of walls between lamps and closets. So that's how the typical apartment exhibition looked like back in the 70s, where you could come without making an appointment, and sometimes you couldn't see difference between different authors, although most of them were signed, but everything was kind of jammed in a very small place. Surrealism, abstract art, conceptual art in some cases, surrealistic works. For example, in one of the exhibitions, together with such works, there were the first conceptualist work of Andrei Monastyrsky, number 2, named A Gun in the Pile, which were demonstrated at the Performance of Russia exhibition. And here's some interesting statistics reflecting situation in that period of time. In those years, in the first stage was participated by 132 artists and 741 works have risen. The next stage, 163 works and 725 artworks had been exhibited. Otherwise, all the underground art world attempted to make a statement, and the flow of visitors through these spaces was really very intense, and same works were demonstrated in different places, different apartments. The State Dome, the official dome, couldn't overlook, as this group of artists was permitted to arrange a big exhibition at the House of Culture at the VDNH. But very soon it was clear that any attempts to come to agreement with the organizers, and that was the state, the government, represented by different levels of the power vertical, which could be anything from a local subdivision of the Union of Artists to the department, the Ministry of Culture. So the artists agreed, even under control, to demonstrate their works to the public. And there were 2 main conditions. All the participants of the exhibition had to be registered in Moscow, and the second condition, the works exhibited at this show should not violate the principle of the Soviet criminal law as fixed in the criminal code. At the exhibition, a kind of organizing committee or the expert council had been established, including mostly the initiator of this event from the art community, but since they were collaborating with the permitting institutions, also censoring institutions, the initiators, or those who could be called the first heroes of self-organization, were forced to impose certain self-restrictions, or just to show certain inclination for self-censoring, but that did help them a lot. Not all the works were allowed for exhibition, and already on the evening, on the day of exhibition, the censor committee, consisting of 30 members, came to the exhibition, and the committee said that they're not going to discuss and review their decisions with the artists, and the commission demanded to take off quite a lot of the works because, according to their opinion, they were vividly anti-Soviet. And on top of that, the works were accused of pornography, sectantism, insults to the childhood and Zionist inclinations. So it was quite a long story, thanks to registering by Leonid Talochkin, whom we already saw in the previous pictures. So the artist came to a conclusion that any collaboration with any institution or the structure known as the government or state distorts the initial ideas, leads to distorting the initial ideas, leads to the need to impose censorship on the self, and parallel to the idea of holding and arranging in parallel apartment exhibitions in other places, that moved kind of into the backdrop of those who could allow themselves they were trapped in the ghetto. And then in 1962 the work of collective activities group had begun, as was written in the article by Tina Bobritsky, became an institution inside unofficial art. This group, thanks to its rhythmic work, thanks not to dedicating a lot of effort to the activity, but also to reviewing discussion of the activities, had developed a very stable human circle at certain plain level for reviewing the problems of art world. This is more or less similar to what Nicola was talking about. Otherwise, the publications which help to become the alternative sites for self-organization in the times when no gesture was possible without scrutiny of the secret police or the artistic official institutions, art officialdom, which definitely were acting with assistance of enforcement agencies. So here you see the image of a so-called trip to the country, where in the same publication text by the artists had been collected the opinions and feedbacks of the performance viewers, and then in 1979 the opinion had been expressed by the main figures of the circle, who said that it's high time now to put together the Moscow archive of new art, which is also quite noticeable because in all today's presentations we hear the mentioning of archive as yet another side for the problems and things which didn't get into the future. So the Moscow archive becomes the same kind of alternative site for the artists who fell out of the official art structure, who had the access to the public and to the exhibition sites. Nevertheless, in that time, not only apartments could become sites for exhibiting, but also the walls of some Moscow clubs. Here on this picture you see one-day exhibition at the Moscow Institute of Engineers and Physicists, where its leaders, the Komsomol leaders, can be noticed not only in sympathy, not only to the rock music, but also to some avant-garde artists. Well, nevertheless, apartments still remain very important venues for artists who didn't belong, even those who didn't belong to already traditional culture of apartment artists. So here you see Konstantin Zachot, participant of Mukamor group, pictured at the group exhibition organized by Yuri Albert in his apartment. Inside the walls of his apartment he gathered together with whom he grew up, his friends, those who shared his way of thinking, and even this exhibition had demonstrated the difference between the previous generation and the current generation. The new generation had shown much stronger strive for, providing very sharp stylistic differences, and here it's impossible to notion not only the generation proximity and closeness, but also the their sharing of same ideological viewpoints. In this particular case, of Yuri Albert and those whose work he was demonstrating: Vladimir Zagarov, Yuri Lutz, Nadezhda Stolkovskaya, and very soon those who demonstrated their works at this exhibition in December of '79, and those who came to this exhibition as visitors, namely Mikhail Roshal, ex-participant of the Gniezdo group and members of collective activities group, they came to opinion that it's high time to found a real gallery, absolutely different from officially permitted Soviet institution, neither bearing any similarity to the ghetto allowed by the city Committee of Graphic, and that's how Art Gallery had emerged, and the first group exhibition opened. In this exhibition combined the representatives of the generation, and at the same time formed the circle of artists who jointly within for the next 2 years shall be formulating a very specific language of the second wave of Moscow conceptualism. That involved Vladimir Alexeyev, the Honorable Vladimir Zakharov, and Viktor Skersis, whose works you see on this picture, also the Tot Art group, Georg Kiselvalter, Mikhail Roshal, the Mukamor group, and some other representatives of the inner circle of those whom I just mentioned. So the apartment space was rearranged and applied for turned into mostly transformed into white space, very close to the white cube space. Here on this picture you see just a small slot of a window, and the rest of the wall space is covered by the works, including the ceiling as well. The works were also hanging in the hall, covering the window panes, sometimes on the ceiling, sometimes they were kind of mimicking just to the level of the usual apartment objects, and like back in 56, like back in 75, there was big rumors, and word of mouth worked, and it was becoming more and more popular. And as I said, well, for the art gallery to be released, well, several people gathered to review and talk about the strategy and tactics. It was decided that, well, participants of the exhibitions may be only people from the inner circle, really close in terms of the aesthetic views to the organizer, those who could speak the same language.
So this gallery of art actually filtered that youth, and many were outside of this gallery art activities, and many are still furious when they say that they were rejected. But this gallery lived on less than 2 years, but it managed to hold 14 different events. Some of them were very remarkable, and just like any gallery at that time, because nobody, no one who participated in that process ever visited abroad, and so they had no idea what it could be like. But they published invitations, they published posters, they wanted to hold exhibitions regularly, about once a month. When the exhibition by Skerso and Zakharova was destroyed by police, and KGB started a case to pursue Sasoyev, and they really destroyed the exhibition. They took the works of art, nobody knows where. They started coming to different apartments to search the apartments, and it was only at the end of May 1983 when they had an action in Moscow region forest, which was called Aptart in the nature, Aptart в натуре. So the alternative to apartment activities was the no man's land, the area which was not marked and never belonged to anyone. That's why the artists from коллективные действия, collective actions group went there in order to avoid the consequences of apartment exhibitions, because they wanted to find a place where they could feel free from the big brother's control. And the other open air venue was brothers Mironenko's dacha. This was in September 1983, and you can see quite many people who came to see the exhibition that took place in a private space. So it was an open air exhibition, and it symbolized the area of freedom, because on the one hand it was a private space of a person, but like the exhibition in February showed that the private space was also under the surveillance, so the artists could feel free only without any roof over their heads. Some more photos from art exhibitions. So those forms of Soviet self-organized art initiatives and this underground gallery art. It not only helped to shape the generation taste or some aesthetic worldviews, but also helped this generation to develop further. Because, for example, the works of artists from Odessa were shown by this gallery. And of course, Larisa Rizun, Zvezdochotov, Yuri Liderman, Perцы group, Peppers group, and so the self-organization is extremely important in 2015, so that the artists could make a statement against the state or against the market, even while being repressed by the machine of the special services. And also in terms of existential meaning, when you are surrounded by likely-minded people that can confirm that you're doing something valuable, that you're doing it not in vain, that it's important. And the natural continuation of Aptart Gallery was the avant-garde groups, because Aptart finally was destroyed, and in May in 1987 the Club of Avant-Gardists was opened due to the policies of the government, but also due to the efforts of the participants themselves, who managed to use different sites, the district exhibition space, up to the main swimming pool in the bathhouse Sandunin. And I would also like to tell you briefly about one more gallery, even though I have run out of time, but I wanted to tell you about the economic aspect of self-organization in those years. In order to create an exhibition in the Aptart Gallery, you didn't need much money, and actually all the participants of that gallery worked, so they could fund different gatherings, different exhibitions, and also those visitors that came to the exhibitions were making their own contributions, even though the artists could never rely on those funds, because the artists, those artists that represented degenerative art, managed to work with the market. But if we speak about Aptart, they didn't really find the market yet at that time, so they couldn't rely on the support from the collectors. They were never considered those opportunities. So Aptart could be considered as a paying off enterprise, and quite a different example is represented by Vrubil Gallery. So it was Dmitry Vrubil, a famous participant of the Archive of New Art, but he made it to history quite late, in the late 80s, and after Aptart Gallery was shut down, he opened a gallery in his apartment in Kusinin Street in 1986, and that was the place where the gallery was working for 3 years. Even though Vrubil himself he used to say that he was there up to the mid-90s, up to 1996. But the most famous period of that gallery work was during late 80s, early 90s. So the first exhibition took place on the 10th of August in 1986. And actually they were personal exhibitions of the apartment's owner. Often using the private space as an exhibition space happened when the owner himself was trying to use the space for his life and turn it into the place for art. It's interesting that Rubel in his interview was saying that his gallery was commercially successful. And his first exhibition was held in 1996, and it was the group by Чемпионы мира, the Champions of the World group. So it was during Perestroika boom for Soviet art that happened in the late 80s. So the market was growing rapidly, and whatever happened in the context of Soviet non-official art was in high demand. And the owner of that gallery, Dmitry Rubel, was very happy about the artists who could make some money and receive a good profit. So the gallery in Tripurny Periulok opened in 1991, and it was a laboratory space for the artists that united around South Russia. The artists that came from Rostov-on-Don, they settled in the corner house, Valery Koshlякov, Teraganyan and others. So they created their own community, so they squatted in that house, and they continued working as painters and graphic artists. They wanted to improve their skills, they wanted to go beyond academic skills, academic school. They painted the walls in the studio upstairs and did the renovations, but they never really exhibited any works there. So it's very important to think about self-organization not only as the way to make money, but also as a laboratory space that can help you try different controversial approaches, different exposition methods, like in the case with Aidan Gallery's exhibition Milosердие or Kindness, when the public had to observe three poor men sitting on the gallery floor. Or like with the exposition Море водки, the sea of vodka, that was running throughout the evening. It was both the exhibition and an act. And so it was all about the metaphor that the sea of alcohol can make any activity very interesting. So this was kind of attraction, and this gallery was closed in 1993 when all the people that resided in that building had to move to different places that they received. Actually, there are so many stories in the history of art in this country, but I guess we could have a separate course of lectures. That's why I don't say anything about чистые пруды, Spider Mouse, Chip Gallery. I don't have time to tell you anything about exhibitions in the studios in Baumanskaya that could be very significant for the story, because in the mid-90s self-organized art initiatives focused not only on the exhibition practices, not actions, but more on discursive practices, like it was in the gallery in Baumanskaya, because this was the place for disputes, for discussions that, of course, could bring forward the truth. And I guess this is where I should finish my talk. I would like to thank you for coming, and we will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. And tomorrow we are going to start our discussion related to self-organization, and then we'll continue with private spaces. So thank you very much.